Guys, so now we're in my kitchen and we're going to get started on making these kale chips. So remember the kale that we collected outside? It's all been rinsed, and I used just a standard salad spinner to get it really nice and dry. You want to make sure the kale is really dry, so that way it takes a little less drying time in your dehydrator. Although we're going to add some liquid creamy sauce to it, you don't want to have even more extra excess water if it's not necessary. So using a pretty large size bowl, or you can also do it in a bag if you have one maybe a little bit bigger, so there's room to massage the liquid. Add your kale. I like to leave room in the bowl, so I'm going to add in the rest of the kale as I massage in the sauce. And for the sauce, I've decided to use coconut milk. I would have used fresh coconut meat, probably from about 3 coconuts, if I had it on hand, but since I don't, I'm going to use the canned coconut milk. But if you have fresh coconut meat, feel free to go ahead and use that. We're using 1 red bell pepper, just de-seeding it. Okay, so then we have our pieces. Since I'm throwing it in a high-speed blender, I don't have to do much chopping, so I'm just going to chop a little bit and put it in there. So today we're using the Vitamix, so we're going to go ahead and add that in there. So 1 red bell pepper with the seeds left out. We're going to add in about ½ a cup of whole coconut milk. I'm sorry, ½ a can. So that's about 1 cup of coconut milk. I'm going to use a shallot. In this recipe, you could feature any of your favorite curry herbs and spices that you'd like. I'm going with what I have on hand here in the kitchen. I'm always a firm believer that I have everything I need in the moment that I'm in. And sure, galangal sounds great, and lemongrass. It all sounds really wonderful, but I wanted to use what I had on hand. And I also wanted to keep it really simple. With things like the lemongrass, I would have had to have steeped and infused more flavor, which would also be very delicious in here. So it just depends on the amount of time you have. So with my shallot, I'm just going ahead, I peeled it, and I'm going to add it to the blender as well. I'm actually going to save all these scraps from the red bell pepper, the garlic, and the shallot to put in a stock pot for later. You've seen in other videos where I showed you how I save all my scraps. This is one great recipe where you'll have flavorful scraps to add to your stock. I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 cloves of garlic. So I'm simply just going to press the garlic with the back heavy end of my knife and my palm, smishing and turning at the same time. And then that's going to help release that skin, which we will again use for the stock. And then what I want to do is peel off that bottom little piece that's usually like really hard and fibrous. I do that so that way I can get to that center piece, which is usually green and hard. They say if you remove that, it helps with digestion and removes garlic breath. So I always like to do it. Since removing that from dishes, I do find garlic is a lot more digestible for myself and as well as Alex. So we like to do that in our house. So simply, once you have it smashed open, remove that center bit, save that for your stock, and add the 2 cloves to your blender. Okay, so curry, love to add a little lime to that, a little lime juice here. So I'm going to squirt in 1 whole lime. Once we blend it, I'll give it a taste and see if we need to add a little bit more. Depending on the size of your lime and how much juice you get, you might want to adjust it. So try to have 2 limes on hand when you make this recipe. And I'm just going ahead and squeezing that in. And then you just want to add in your favorite seasonings from here, and we're done. Okay, so lime is juiced. I love to sprinkle in some sea salt, so I'm using some Celtic Gray sea salt, equivalent to about ½ a teaspoon. Then I'm going to use some black pepper, so I just keep grinding that in until desired amount. So I'd say about 1 teaspoon is good. I usually pick the peppers straight from my yard. Today, this one is a mix of black and red, so the red ones are from my yard. And then I love heat and spice in every dish. So I'm going to add in red chili pepper flakes, about 1 teaspoon. So as we dehydrate this, it's going to get even more intense in flavor. So you don't want to go too crazy on the spice. But we are going to add some ginger for a little extra spice without getting too crazy. Okay, so with the ginger, since I'm going to blend it up, I do like to peel the skin off, and I'm using about a nugget, can you see this? The size of the top quadrant of my thumb. So you can gauge how much ginger you will like for your recipe. I love the flavor of ginger, I love the spice of ginger, I love the medicinal qualities of ginger, so I go ahead and add in a hearty dose of it. And since this recipe will be for a road trip and for a camping adventure, it's a great way to get my ginger in while I'm traveling. Okay, so we're going to add in our ginger. Simply put the lid on our Vitamix or any blender that you might be using. Okay, and one helpful tip is if you're not using a high-speed blender, be sure to pour that coconut milk or liquid in first on the bottom. It helps blend it. Okay, so I'm using the new model of Vitamix, so there's an on switch right here. We'll go ahead and put this on to, I'm going to put it on a soup consistency and give it a go. It smells amazing already. You guys, the flavor on this is so savory and delicious. It has the perfect kick of spice, the perfect sweetness from the coconut, the tang from the lime, and the salty from a little bit of salt. Like, you really taste all the flavor combinations in here. I think I'm going to balance it out a teensy bit, and this is totally optional, by adding in a teaspoon of coconut palm sugar to give that little bit extra sweetness to it. But I'm telling you, it's so perfect if you want to leave it just like this, but I'm very curious in the kitchen, so I'm going for it. So about a teaspoon of coconut palm sugar. I love using the new Vitamix, by the way, those pre-settings where you can make ice cream or soup are just fabulous. You just let it go. You don't even have to shut it off. You can just let it keep going. I didn't really want this to heat up because I'm just going to go ahead and pour it on the kale chips and put it in the dehydrator, but it really is amazing because you can walk away from the blender and just let it do its magic. Okay, we're going to let it blend for just another second, so I'm going to manually do this one. Alright, so excited. So it's quite liquidy. But it's not a problem, it just means it will take a little bit longer in the dehydrator, most likely to dry out. So you could also add in some cashews if you want to thicken it up, but I'm trying to keep the nuts out of this recipe. Beautiful. So we're going to massage this and then we're going to add the other batch of our kale. Ooh, yum. I know a lot of people have complained that a lot of the raw and vegan kale chips don't sit well in their stomach, and I think it might be due to that combination of adding the cashews and the nutritional yeast in there. So I'm also a big fan of trying this variation to just kind of see how this reacts on the digestive system as well. Kale chips are delicious, so they end up being worth it in the end. But if we can kind of ease the digestive process even more so with a yummy and delicious different kind of recipe, then why not, right? Best of both worlds, my favorite. So I'm massaging in the kale, and then as I get some room, if you wanted to turn on the stove tonight, you could technically even just saute this delicious dish. Have a different version of the recipe. But I hope that some of them will make it into your dehydrator. So now that I massage this, I'm adding in that final bit of kale. Getting it really well worked in here. You want to give it a nice massage. Oh wow. Those spices really shine through. That ginger and garlic. You can really also taste each individual flavor in the blend, which is really spectacular. Okay, once your kale has had a really nice bath, just going to go ahead and line it on your dehydrator sheet or on a baking sheet, depending on how you're going to use this. If you do not have a dehydrator, just go ahead and put it in your oven and test that out on the lowest setting and see how long that might take you, and just keep a close eye on that. So here we go, a really nicely massaged bowl of kale curry chips. Rinse my hands, grab a dehydrator sheet, be right back in a jiff. So you guys, I'm using just a regular grilled dehydrator sheet. So what I'm going to do is just put a piece of parchment paper over it so it doesn't get my dehydrator too messy. If you had, actually, you know what I can use? If you have one of those silicone mats, you could also use that as well. So that way you don't have to cause any extra waste. I will go ahead and use the parchment paper. I have it here right now. But you can use a variety of different liners just to keep your machine a little bit more on the clean side and keep it all contained without falling through the cracks of your dehydrator. Okay, you guys, so here we go. I'm just going to spread it out in thin, even layers. That way it dries pretty nice and even here. Oh my God, those flavors. You would think that I was just in here cooking up a curry for hours. Nope, not the case. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. Probably the best smelling kale chips I've ever made. Ooh, look at that. So I'm estimating I'll probably have about 3 trays here. And I'll go ahead and fill in the rest of the trays and report back to you guys with the finished product shortly after. So I'm estimating that this might take about anywhere from 12 to 18 hours to fully dehydrate. Could take even a little longer, so I'll let you know in the end, but overall it just is going to depend on your machine. So play around with it, keep an eye on it. It's so great to taste test these in between. At every stage they're really delicious, so enjoy, have fun, get creative with your kale chips, and leave a comment, let me know what you think. And save your scraps, use it in your veggie broth. See you later, guys!